This is KVCI.blogspot.com, George Boston Rhymes. Once again, I'm still in Quitman, Georgia, and I'm still talking about the realities of life here in Georgia. And I want you to know the truth, because the truth, and only the truth, will set you free. In Brooks County, we understand a few years ago in 2007, there was a taser death of a black man. People marched. Over 500 people marched. Whether there has been justice in that case or not, I can't say. But I can highlight that he has not been the only black African-American that has died here in Quitman in Brooks County, and very few people are talking about it. We'll talk about heritage. We'll talk about the crime rate. We'll talk about unborn fetuses that needs to be born but was aborted through abortion. But I'm here to say to you this thing, that we, the people of America, we, the retired and active duty military veterans, has a right to have a voice. We should be heard. We should be published in the news media and on TV when we have cutting-edge stories and not ignored. Now, we hear a lot about the Quitman 10. In fact, the Quitman 10 has galvanized people throughout the state of Georgia and around this nation because of their alleged voter fraud incident. We also understand that there are voter fraud problems across the nation since President Barack Obama was voted into office. Now, I have knowledge of those 8 that were arrested over in Madison, Florida, black African Americans for voter fraud. We also have an incident in Tallahassee, Florida, with alleged voter fraud incidents, all by Democrats. Also, when there was a press conference over in Willacoochee, Georgia, no news media was at that event, but KVCI and George Boston Rhymes was there because I love you, and I love this republic, and I love the founding father that set this nation up. And although blacks was excluded, God had us in the program, and so I do what I do because I want you to know the truth. I don't want to report just one side of the news, and I invite those of the opposition to the Quitman 10 to call me at 229-251-8645, and I will do a clip on them, and I will tell their story just as clear and just as plain as I'm telling right now, just as clear and plain as I'm talking about the Quitman 10, I will talk about them, because that's what I do, and that's the flavor of my nature. Now back to Quitman. We have unsolved murders. We have unsolved deaths in this community of Brooks County and Quitman. Did you not know? Let me call the roll of blacks that, some of the blacks that we know about, and no justice had been received. Henry Ford, right here in Quitman, in Brooks County, died for reasons without justice. Willie Stevens, Earl Evans, Carl Heber, he was a good basketball player. I went to school with him. Burned up in a police car. I understand some say he was going with a white woman. Ed Denson, Myron Denson, William Wooten, Joyce Stewart, James Demps, Curtis Johnson, and another man in Lowndes County tell me there are one more that he know about I don't have here, and I got to get that from him. But I was in the armed forces, but I walked the streets of Quitman when James Demps was killed by a police officer, I believe it was, and I walked the streets of Quitman to get enough members to set up the NAACP or to reactivate the charter over in Lowndes County. I was was on the issues then, because like then and now, I love you so much until I just want you to have the truth, because I understand the Jesus that y'all talk about placate and duplicate and complicate by going to church on Sunday, going to mosques and Jumal on Friday, going to synagogue and temples under Hindu and other great religions. But when it comes to standing up on behalf of the mistreated, the downtrodden, and our children and coming generations, we're nowhere to be found. And it is a sad day in the neighborhood. Now, in Lowndes County, just 18 miles east of here, in 2004, there was an 1860 child displayed on the second floor of City Hall, entering Judge Edwards' courtroom. That is the courtroom wherein all citizens went, expecting justice under the law. But they had a disgraceful, and I do mean disgraceful, charter display. That 1860 Valdosta charter said, I'm going to quote it for you. That the mayor and council shall pass all proper and necessary laws and ordinances for the control of slaves and free persons of color in said town Valdosta, and suppress and abate all nuisances arriving from hogs, dogs, horses, or other stock straying at large in Valdosta, Georgia, or from other causes. Now that disgraceful charter was reluctantly, and I do mean reluctantly removed from the walls of City Hall. The mayor, John Freddy, the previous mayor, he didn't see a problem with it. I got it on record. Several of the white European council members did not see anything wrong with it, and they voted against removing it. I stood before our elected officials on several occasions, and in my presentation you can find on kvci.blogspot.com, because that's what I do. And I do it all because of you. Love make you go into territories that are unknown to you, because you know, regardless of what happens, in the end, you and those that listen and are elevated will rise to new heights, because that's the way the ancestors, God, that's the way our ancestors, God, left it for us to follow. Therefore, in conclusion, I want to say to you that the murders that occurred in 1918, I can hear their souls crying out from the grave, saying, is there no help for the widow's son? I repeat, I can hear them crying out, is there no help for the widow's son? And can truth be resurrected from a dead level to a living perpendicular, to be resurrected on the square, which is the Word of God? So we today should not placate, we should not duplicate, we should be trying to regulate in reality the life and legacy that Dr. King left before us, not just to get together and sit down in a church and eat and frolic and play music and have our children to read little nice sounding poems. Dr. King was not about that. Dr. King was about bringing change. Dr. King was about elevating a people from a dead level to a living perpendicular. That's what Dr. King stood for. So if we're not going to live the life of that great man, in my most humble opinion, you ought to get off the stage, or at least let somebody else come on the stage. Even if you set the program up, you ought to respect the people that are living the dream of Dr. King. But don't you play the game of that great man as if though he is a little play toy. I don't like it, and God don't either. Now, I gotta take you over in Lowndes County. So I think I'll close this out, and when we come back, we want to talk about Lowndes County and the disgraceful, and I do mean disgraceful, record of how many people have died in the Valdosta and Lowndes County jail. And our elected officials sit back and imitate and duplicate statesmen. But when it comes down to standing up, or at least writing a letter to the governor, asking him to issue an executive order to have it investigated like he did the Quitman 10, well, stay tuned for more. kvci.blogspot.com. George Boston Rhyme, do what I do because I love you. Bye-bye, we're gone.